Welcome to today's episode of the Fun School Show. We have a special guest today. My friend Korie Robertson was with us at the farm for a really fun event where she and I did a Q&A with a bunch of homeschooling moms and dads and kids from central Indiana. So here we are at Olive Branch Farm. It's a beautiful spring day, and we have got some great things to talk about. Most of you know my family, but I see that there's a lot of people here that I've never met before. Welcome from wherever you came from. Your friends invited you. So this farm, it's kind of a farm. It's a homestead. I mean, we got cows, horses, sheep. My husband and I have 15 children. 5 we adopted 6 years ago at ages 6 to 16. And they were all one sibling group from Ukraine. And then I wanted to have as big a family as possible. That was my dream. First, I just wanted 6 daughters, 1 from every continent. I didn't think anyone would want to marry me, so I thought I was going to have to adopt all of them.
I really wanted to marry you.
And but then, actually, it was really funny. Our first conversation about kids, I'm like, so how many kids do you want? He's like, 1, maybe 2. I was silent because I wanted at least 6. So eventually we compromised. I got 6, he got 2, that made 8, then we just kept going. So our family was missionaries all over the place for a while, and then we felt called to move back to Indiana we had planted a lot of seeds here, and the Lord just called us back to get involved and to put down our roots and to start a homeschooling resource farm where families who homeschool can come. And I also just got recently a renewed call in my heart to get involved with the state of Indiana, and I'm helping my friend Jamie get elected for governor. So we just have a lot of neat things going on. And so Korie and I are going to answer your questions.
All right.
You going to ask him? He's
going
to ask him.
There we go. All right, here we go.
You can go
We
first.
do this. Like, we have a Monday night Bible study where sometimes we do secret questions also, where it's like you don't know what you're going to get, especially when teenagers are asking questions when it's, secret.
Awkward.
It gets really awkward.
Well, I always say we had a reality show about our family, so we'll pretty much answer anything. Like once you do that, you're like open to whatever. Yeah.
Exactly. First, how has your relationship with your children changed as they have become young adults?
Well, I think parenting young adults is so much fun. It has been such a blessing, and so when each of our kids kind of went off to do their thing, there is that sadness because things are changing. There is that I'm going to miss them. But I think it's overcome more just for so much excitement for this is such a fun time in your life and what God is going to do in your life and how you're going to grow and learn over these next few years. So that's been really fun. And just getting to be friends with our kids is just such a blessing. We do have a big family of 6, and so, for a while there, trips are always chaotic and all that whenever you have kids and you're trying to plan and do this. But now we do, so once a year we do just our family, a trip with everybody and all the grandbabies, and it's so much fun. And then other than that, I'll try to just do a one-off, go somewhere with one or jump in on a trip with another because they're going somewhere.
And where did you go? Where did you go on your last trip as a family?
Oh, well, last year as a family, where did we go? We did Sea Island, Georgia last year. It was amazing. We loved it. I'd highly recommend. A few weeks ago, I got to go to South Africa, and John Luke came with us, and so that was really fun to just get to do special things with just take one or take another. And so we try to do something like that. But more than that, it's just kind of the daily check in and talk to and get to enjoy. Not have to actually parent, just get to enjoy.
And several of them live near you, even on your property.
Yes.
They've built homes nearby. We spent a couple weeks with their family, and it was beautiful because they have a property about the same size as ours, but they're you guys are a few years ahead of us. And their kids love them so much they wanted to build homes on their property. And when we got to experience that, I was like, oh, I wonder if any of our kids are going to want to come back and be part of this. We recently had 3 of our adult kids come back, one with a wife and child, to be part of everything happening here. And it's really neat. But
that's a blessing, yeah. My grandmother, who turned 93 yesterday, is at the start of our road. And then my parents, an aunt and uncle, us, and then now 4 of our kids are all on that same property. And then also Willie's brothers all bought houses on this property too. So we're the common denominator. It's like Willie's side and our side are all there, and it's the best, yeah.
Yeah, it's neat. So I had some amazing advice given to me about changing your parenting style as your kids get older. And there was this mom who was a missionary mom. She had 8 kids, adopted 1 more. They were missionaries to Ukraine, the Markeys. And she gave me the best parenting advice I'd ever gotten, because when I got this advice, all my kids were 12 and under. They were about to break into the teen years, and I had no idea how that was going to go, because I was going to get a new teenager every year for 10, 15 years. And so what she told me was, when they're little, you're the lifeguard. You are keeping them alive. That's the parent's role. But as they get older and they get into like the preschool and kindergarten, and they're little, you're actually changing from lifeguard to police officer. You're teaching them the rules, you're enforcing them. Of course, you're going to be nurturing and loving and playing and creative, but you're in police officer mode. But you're teaching them also, not to constantly be at risk of killing themselves. And then, once you get through police officer mode, this is really important, guys. You have to get out of police officer mode, or your middle schoolers and teens are not going to like you. Okay? You become a coach, and you start to coach them, and you start to give them advice, and you're their cheerleader, and you're giving them wisdom. But, the coach will call you out and say, oh, no, you don't. This is how it's done. And you're training them, you're coaching them. And then if you do a really good job coaching your kids and you're not the police officer anymore, sometimes you do need to step back into police officer mode. Sometimes you actually need to call the police on your kids.
Handcuffs are a benefit sometimes.
So, but if you do a good job being a coach, then you get to step into the most beautiful role of all. And I think Korie and I are both there right now, where you get to be a mentor and advisor to your kids. So then in their older teen years and their young adult years and their adult years, you come back to them and you're seeking their wisdom. My mom is here today, and my mom is my great advisor and prayer warrior. And so now I'm in a phase where my kids are coming back to me and seeking wisdom, and they actually want to be with me. But I give my kids as much freedom as they can handle, because I want them to experience as much freedom as possible while there's still the safety net.
For instance, we send our kids on Southwest Airlines, usually by age 12, alone.
To go visit grandparents or whatever, go on mission trips.
So almost all of our kids know how to travel alone.
Yeah, and they start learning this at 12, 13, 14. So... yeah.
We did that too. Our kids, we love for our kids to have that freedom. And Sadie got invited. She was really good at basketball. She got invited to go with the Junior Olympics, to go to Austria at 12, and got on a plane and went by herself. And now looking back, I'm like, I can't believe I sent her by herself to that. But it was so transformative for her. She said it was really a time when she kind of was, because she had been kind of around all Christian people her whole life, and for her to go and be in this place that it wasn't, people didn't all think like her, and for her to kind of be like, question herself, like, what do I really believe? Do I believe this because my parents believe it, or do I believe it because I believe it? So yeah, I think it is really important to give your kids that freedom.
All right, let's continue on. What are your favorite systems in the home for maintaining peace and intentional living? Intentional living. How do you...
Well, I saw Sarah's refrigerator, so she needs to answer that, because it's pretty amazing. I'm like, how does this work with this many kids? And it's amazing. I am not a very like system person, honestly. And so my kids would joke because I'd be like, okay, we're going to start every Thursday night. We're going to have like around the world night, and I'm going to cook a different thing, and we do it once and it's over.
We do that
I
too.
am not very good at that and very good at systems. For me, it's more about like, it's the feel of the house and the room and all that. I would say as far as, I tell the story about one time whenever actually I had a hysterectomy, and I was like not recovering very well, and I walk out and about 3 a.m. and the house was trashed, and I was like, I obviously do not teach these kids anything because we should have had more systems in place, because I was so mad because they had like left the deli meat on the counter and the ice cream was out and all this kind of stuff. So like, we're getting
My
some
life
systems.
every day.
So we're going to get some systems around here, but no. So I was not great at that. Sarah, tell us.
Okay, so when you have like 5, 10, or 15 kids, you cannot just relax. Okay. You, that'll come eventually. Eventually, you'll get to the queen stage, which is where I am now, where I hardly have to do any housework or anything. But what I started doing was I started making a chore chart, and we homeschool, so the kids are around all the time. And we had a chart with every kid's name on it, and then what they have to do after breakfast, what they have to do after lunch, and then what they have to do after dinner. They all want to eat, so they're all going to be at the table. And then when they get up from the table, it's go do your jobs. And so what I would do is I would give one kid like the kitchen in the morning, and then I would give another kid the kitchen in the afternoon. Guess who's enforcing that the kitchen actually gets clean in the morning? The kid who has to do it in the afternoon. So that's one little trick. Another thing is right now that everybody's older, we kind of switched. Everybody has a zone that they're responsible for in the house. And so they have their zone. They have to make sure that zone stays in order. If they're going to be gone, they can trade with somebody. But the other thing we're doing right now is we have morning clean teams, and there is a team of 2 or 3 of the kids that have to get up before me. Well, before I come out, like I'm usually up. I'm just not engaged with what's going on in the house until like 9:30. But they have a checklist of like 15, 20 things they're supposed to do before I step into the kitchen in the morning. And everybody has one day a week when they do that, and they don't always do that.
Yes, to let all of us parents collectively off the hook. When you have young kids, it's not clean.
No.
It's a mess.
Sometimes you have to pay them in ice cream, and that helps. The other thing is we don't have animals unless the children are 100% responsible for those animals. And guess what happens if they're not? The animals die, right? And they learn their lesson. I do not do animals. I love animals. I want as many as we can handle, but they are not my job. They're their job. So.
All right. How do you handle technology and phones?
I'm going to let you answer this one.
Okay.
That's a
Okay.
tough
Who
one.
does it?
So I feel like we're learning so much more. Ours are grown, so now we're going to deal with it with grandbabies. But one of the things that I have said that I wish I would have known more, I think whenever it all happened and Instagram was happening and social media was happening, I was worried about my boys because the obvious things that you can get into on the internet for your boys. So I was very worried about them. I was controlling of them. I made sure and no phones in the bedrooms, no electronics in the bedrooms, no anything, all that. And but my girls, I wasn't as worried about. I was like, oh, it's a photo app. I don't know what this is. And I wish I would have been more protective of my girls in that, because now all the research is coming out of how that affects girls and depression and anxiety and all that. And so I think it's just, you just got to know you're opening your kids up to the world, to strangers on the internet when you allow them access to these phones. And there's so many access points. One of the things that was a struggle for me was I was like, oh, get rid of this, and then you can get on the internet on this, and then get rid of this, and get on the internet on that. And there's, I have a funny story about our son, one of our sons. I won't tell which one since it's being recorded here, but one of our sons. So the rule was like no devices in the bedroom. Well, he was a teenager, and somebody found a device in his bedroom, and so it was a Wii device. So he comes in the door, and my husband, he didn't know what it is. Like, he didn't know what a Wii is or whatever. Willie, he's not really super technological. And so he goes, he says, I heard there's a Wii in your bedroom. My son thought he said weed, and he was like, no, there's not. And then Willie's like, well, some kind of device. Well, then that was like the time period that like the kids were vaping and things like, which I guess they still are, but I don't know. Well, so then he's like, no. So then he outed himself on having a vape device, but we actually saw the Wii device in his bedroom. So we got 2 in 1. And he's like, oh, and he's like, it's not weed, I promise. Anyway, so sometimes you just have to bust them, and they don't even know. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of staying on top and having those conversations, and sometimes they don't get it, and it's really hard because everyone else is doing it and all that. But it is so important to protect our kids from the internet.
I really think. Now, I can't give away our secrets.
I know. We got a good one.
We got
privately.
some good secrets about finding out stuff. Come see me. It's the ultimate trick and questions to ask to out them.
That's the policeman
Yep.
phase.
You'll find like 5 things that you didn't want to know.
Yeah, well, this is when they get, Yeah,
14.
we're moving on. So Satan is after our kids. It's no different. It's just that there are so many more avenues technologically. And, man, it feels hard because you have to be willing to swim upstream. You have to be willing to say, no, you don't get a phone. Because having the almighty device, this is, it's not based on your age. I mean, Isaac's my only boy over 18. He didn't get a phone till he was 18. He moved out.
Our boys don't have phones.
No.
Our
Now,
young girls don't have phones.
Girls, by default, don't have phones. It's a maturity thing. I don't care what their age is. It's, the responsibility and all the things that go along with it. So don't be afraid to swim upstream. Mm-hmm. Be willing to say no, even though all the Joneses have it and all their friends have it. All the kids in the youth group have it. All the kids in the youth group have phones. And I go and I'm like, what are you parents doing? It's crazy. I was a computer guy for a lot of years, so I, kind of specialize in all the computer nerd stuff. And my goodness, put snooping stuff on your kids' phones, or if they do have phones, put snooping stuff on computers. You need to protect your kids.
Yeah.
All right.
I have 2 friends whose kids nearly got trafficked. Well, did get trafficked 3 times. Because their 15-year-old daughters were on phones and made boyfriends with some random guy and then ended up being taken out of state. So it happens.
Okay. How did you navigate all the questions from your adopted son or our adopted kids regarding being adopted?
So we adopted Will when he was 5 weeks old. So he was just a baby. And we just always talked about it. He loved, when he was little, he loved the story. He was like, tell him the story about how you got me. He would love for us to tell that story. And so we talked just a lot about it, just very openly for his whole life. And amazingly, so it was a closed adoption. We did not know his birth mother at all. And I didn't know anything about her. I had Bella on the day that was scheduled for our final, go to the courthouse and finally sign the papers for him. So I didn't get to go. I was in the hospital having Bella whenever. Wow. So we got 2 babies in one day.
Wow.
And yeah, so Willie goes and he peeked over at the birth certificate and he saw that his birth mom's name was Emily, but it was closed adoption. So that's all we knew. And I remember one time when Will was little, he asked me, he said, what's your friend's name, Mom? And I said, what friend? And he said, your friend who gave me to you. And I was like, that was so sweet. So I said, Emily. I was so thankful that I knew her name. Several years later, well, I guess a lot of years later, there was a little boy at our church that looked just like our Will. His name was Will also, and we called him Mini-Me. We thought he was so cute, and they were good little friends. And one day, his granddad came up to me and asked me our Will's birthday, and I told him, not thinking anything about it, and come to find out, our Will and his Will were brothers. And yes, they were going to our church. Yes, it was insane. So
They're both Will.
They were both named Will. Yes, she had gotten pregnant again and had another baby and named her next son Will. And they weren't even in our town. We didn't know they were in our town. We didn't know anything. We had gotten him. He was with a foster family in Baton Rouge. We knew nothing about that. So they ended up at our church. We met Will's birth mom at that point, and she was amazing, exactly like I'd always prayed, that she would just love God, and by the time we met her, that she would have her life straight, and that she would be able to love Will, and he would, love Will in a way that was good for him, and she was, and so we're close, and we're friends, and she owns the bakery in town, and we got to, whenever Will got married this last year, we got to sit right beside each other. As he walked down the aisle, as we prayed together, we bawled together, we shared the first dance together, and it was amazing. So God just does more than you can ever ask or imagine.
Well, we adopted all 5 of ours on the same day, and they were ages 6 to 16. And it's a really neat thing. We chose them, but they had to choose us back, because in Ukraine, the children have to agree to the adoption. So we had known them for about 2 years because they were in the orphanage where we were volunteering. We had always had a heart for adoption. My parents adopted a daughter from an orphanage in Korea, and I just thought, well, that's what you do. That's our responsibility as humans, to adopt. And so I had just always had a call and always knew we were going to adopt. And that was just something on our heart. But then we just kept having more and more and more kids, and that dream just kind of drifted away. But then when we were called to missions, we really felt called to orphans. And eventually I got the opportunity to serve in this orphanage, and we met our kids. Abby turned around and looked at me. We met eyes, and there was a voice that just said, "This is your daughter." And I didn't see her for like 8 months because we were only at that orphanage for a Christmas pageant. And then later, I was asked to come take one of the orphanage boys who was about to age out as an intern with our publishing company. So I would go to the orphanage, and I would work with this one kid, but then I ended up working with all the kids in his dorm, and then they asked me to work with all the kids in the orphanage because the kids were getting better grades in school when they were working with me after school. So we met. I sent a picture of Abby to a friend of mine. I said, "Do you know who this little girl is, and is she available for adoption?" And they're like, "Yes, but she has 4 siblings, and one of them is a teenager." I told him, and he's like, "No," because he had a teenage foster sister, and it was really, really rough. And I had a teenage adopted sister, and it was really, really rough. And we both went into this knowing that when you adopt teenagers, things can get really, really crazy because you had not been investing in that child for that long. And everything we worried would happen happened, and it's all right. It's been 6 years, and it's okay. But the younger 4 are doing incredible. But the beautiful thing was when God invites each one of us into our family, he wants all people to come into his family, but we have to say yes. And we were so worried. The older girl didn't really want to be adopted. She wanted to stay in Ukraine, but she became willing because she wanted her younger siblings to be adopted. It was a beautiful thing. So she said yes. All the kids said yes. And it was just like how we all say yes to Jesus when he invites us to come into his family.
All right. A light question here. Do you like being on TV?
Actually, it was really fun, I have to say. We had the best of all worlds. I feel like we got to stay in our same town. We got to do it with our family. Our kids were with us. Willie jokes because he's like, we had to like be on scenes with his like nieces and nephews. He's like, come on, you gotta do it, you know. But it was so fun. Our kids got to be with their grandparents more than, which we're very close and all live together and all that anyway. But just more than ever because we were filming together every day. They got to know their Uncle Si even more than ever. And so it was a really fun experience. We've actually talked about whether we would do it again, and all of our kids were like, yeah, we would do it again. So maybe we'll see. We might do it again.
Our family did one episode of House Hunters International. When we moved to Italy, I had a public Facebook event, goodbye party to the Brown family of 11 moving to Italy. And I started getting phone calls from House Hunters International that they wanted to cover our story of our family moving to Italy, and I thought it was a scam, and I ignored them like 5 times. Finally, he called me. He's like, no, this is for real, and we did, and it was fun, and we loved it. The kids were like ages 6 months to 13, and Isaac learned how to be a film guy because he trailed the film crew the whole time and decided that's one of the things he wanted to do with his life.
That's awesome. I tell them they should do a reality TV show because I'm like, we need more believers. We need more Christian families in the spotlight. That was one thing it kind of surprised me, I think, whenever we decided to do the show. So many Christians were like, oh, don't do it. You know what'll happen if you go to Hollywood. Your kids will end up on drugs and you'll get divorced. Is this like fear of doing something? It's like stay in your box. Don't do something different. And, we just really feel like God didn't call us to a spirit of fear, but he called us to one of power and love and a sound mind. And if he is with us, he is in us, he'll go before us. And so every time, anyone who's kind of a believer is like, should I do something in television? I'm like, yes, we need more Christians in Hollywood. So yes.
Yeah.
And our family is starting a podcast show coming up here in a couple weeks, so that's going to be fun.
It'll be fun. So it'll be like a day in our life and then just us talking.
Interviews, our kids.
I will be watching.
Crazy stuff. All right. How did the hopes you had for your children family change as they grew up and you grew alongside them?
So I think I always felt like I don't really care what my kids do and I just want them to love God, to love people. Like Jesus says, sum it up in that, and I wanted to help shape the kind of people they were, but not who they are. I wanted them to be kind and full of love and joy and peace and all that. So I think I always felt that, but one thing that I feel like looking back, I've learned. So I have a journal that I wrote just little things about each of our kids when they were little. And as each of them have gotten married, I pulled it back out and just read through it. And it's amazing to see that who they were at 2 is who they are at 20.
It's so true.
It's just amazing. Sadie's whole ministry is called Live Original. And that's because Willie nicknamed her the original when she was little. And but it is so true. And when they get older, you can go back and you look at that and after I was reading it, I thought, I really didn't do anything. I just fed them because God made them. He created them who they are. And I think I wish I would have just known that even more. Just as a parent, your role is really just to nurture what God put in them, what he created in them. It's not to do anything other than that, to protect them from the outside forces that might hurt that or that might harm that, and just to help nurture what God made in them and he created in them.
Yeah, I know for me, I feel like every person has a calling from God on their life. And so I decided that I was not going to raise any standardized children. I was not going to pay attention to what the government or what society or what the school standards or anything says, because I just believe there are enough standardized people in the world and we don't need more. And so I began to watch what gifts, what passions, what callings each child have. And I believe that God calls people to be a light in all different areas of influence, to be a light in entertainment, to be a light in the arts, to be a light in science, in medicine, in politics, in business, in the economy, in farming and gardening and raising animals and raising children and missions and music. And so I began to just watch as my children were growing, what's that passion and how am I going to teach them to use that for Jesus? And as they got older, I began to really invest in their passions and in their calling and in their vision. And now my kids, all my kids are doing their passion for Jesus, right? That's what they do.
All right. We'll kind of start to wrap it up here, and just so you know, if we didn't get to your question, guess what these are? These are podcast episodes.
Yes.
So
yeah, I'll answer all those, and I'll send you pictures
we'll
of them.
split them up and.
Perfect.
All right. So last question: what's the best way to stop the nagging inner voice that you aren't doing enough for your children?
Ooh, that's good.
That is
a good one.
That's
It's
a
a
very
really good
good
one.
question. So I think I actually posted about this today because my grandmother turned 93 yesterday. And one gift that she gave us, I think, is she's just a confident mom and grandmother. And my mom was a confident mom and grandmother. And I know they didn't always feel it, I'm sure, because I know as a mom and grandmother, I don't always feel it. But I think your kids really do. They thrive on that security, and that whenever you know that, like, God gave these kids to you. They're yours.
Yes.
He is going to give you the wisdom. Ask for it. You can ask God for wisdom. He's going to give you the tools. He's going to give you the skills. He's going to put people in your life. He's going to give you the books, the mentors, those things that are going to equip you to parent your children. And just walk in confidence in that. And even when you don't feel it, fake it until you make it, because kids do need that. They need to feel mom. And not that we, obviously, as parents, like, we need to be real. We need to be willing to apologize when we're wrong. We need to be willing to step up and say, like, I don't have all these answers. I really don't know. Your kids need to see you as being real, but they do need to see a parent that is confident. So if you don't feel it, go out and find the tools. Find the person, someone that you respect, that you see that is doing it and seems to be doing it right, and ask them. But one thing I think is, I've noticed, just as we have kids that all have kids now, it's like there's so much out there about parenting, and it's like this parenting style and this parenting style and this parenting style, and it can be so confusing and I think overwhelming, and can feel a little bit like I don't know how to do it right because there's so many different ways to do it. But I just want to encourage you that, like, just love your kids and just be real with them, be authentic, love God, and show them what that looks like and feels like, and just try to live what you say you believe, and your kids are going to be all right.
Yeah. Your kids are probably going to turn out like you, whether you like it or not. That's if they're spending a lot of time with you, they're going to become like you. And it happens, and it's scary, and it's beautiful. And so be intentional about being the people that you want your kids to grow up to be. So I believe more in teaching by example than by teaching.
Like, I'm watching my kids drive like me. It's
Yeah.
really bad.
I know, it's scary. So, like, be the kind of adult you want your kids to be. And so, like, you want them to grow up and, like, serve Jesus. You want them to grow up and have fun in the kitchen. You want them to grow up and have a messy house. You want them to grow up and have a clean house. Whatever you want your kids to grow up and do, it's not
sure
about
about
what you say. It's about what you do, and it actually doesn't matter all that much. Okay? The things we worry so much about, so much of it doesn't even matter. Love Jesus, love your kids, have fun together, and don't worry about what everybody else says. Your biggest critic is yourself and your relatives. And here's the thing. Take advice from the people you want to be like. If you don't want to be like the relative that is telling you you're doing it wrong, and you don't want your kids to be like your kids, just don't listen to them. Take advice from the people you want to be like.
That's
and
very true.
Just don't worry about the advice of the people who mean well, but you don't want to be like them.